On show 472, 1 year of Electrify America, loads of battery stories, and Audi goes after Tesla's charging record. With those stories and many more coming up on today's podcast, welcome to EV News Daily. I always figure there must be somebody in the world listening to this for the very first time thinking, a podcast about electric cars every single day? What kind of madman would do that? Hello, my name is Martyn Lee, and it's your edition for Wednesday, 15th of May today. I go through every EV story that I can find and pick out only the best ones for you. Getting a tip today that it looks like the Renault Zoe could be coming off the embargo in the next few days of people who know things about the brand new Zoe. Best-selling car in France, of course. One of the best-selling cars here in Western Europe. Oh, I own one. And looking forward to the new one, based on the Clio, a car that you can't get in the USA, unfortunately. A great little city car. In fairness, it would look like a roller skate on your roads in the US. Funnily enough, I was talking to my stepsister, is over from the US, currently in the UK. Enjoying some holiday time, or she would call it vacation time, back seeing friends and family at home since she moved to the US many years ago. And I was saying to her that when I was over in Miami a couple of weeks ago to maybe a month ago now to see the team, my friends at myev.com, and I was looking at the myev parking lot, and I took the Tesla Model X, which they had, and I was seeing Miami from the P100D with ludicrous mode, and I was saying that in that, on US roads, it just felt like a normal-sized car. In the UK, a Model X feels really big, and the kind of car I drive is sort of normal city car. This wouldn't work. The Renault Zoe wouldn't work in the US. On Miami's big, wide-open roads, yeah, the Model X just felt normal. Because let's face it, there was these massive trucks, and I would say trucks not as in what I would call a lorry, what in America, a truck like a pickup truck, some huge ones coming past. So anyway, there you go. Differences of taste in cars. Yeah, so thank you very much, as always, to the team at myev.com for supporting this show. And it's a place you can go to not only sell, but also buy your next EV. Check it out. Maybe recommend it to somebody who you think might get some value out of checking out myev.com. So we're a year into Electrify America. There's a great long read article on CNBC today all about Electrify America, which I would recommend you read it. I'll put a link there in the show notes if you want to read more. Almost a year to the day after opening their very first charging station, Electrify America says it's rolling out the country's fastest growing network of superfast chargers. Of course, it's funded by $2 billion from Volkswagen's You've Been Very Naughty settlement. It has a goal of building hundreds of stations and putting nearly 2,000 chargers in place by the end of the year. And CNBC saying that setting up a nationwide infrastructure is the big challenge, according to many analysts. Now, a study by McKinsey, and a McKinsey study last August projected that it's going to cost $50 billion to replace gas stations in the US, Europe and China with EV chargers if you put them in all the same places. The US alone is expected to require an investment of $11 billion, McKinsey estimated, to replicate the current model of filling up your car. But that's not the way it works. You and I know this. We don't need to replace petrol stations with electric cars, chargers. Okay, I would admit I've softened on this stance over the last few months, mainly from my friends like Sasha Pallenberg, a former supporter of this show, who says, look, actually, he spends a lot of time in big suburban high-rise city centres where you don't have parking, and if you want to charge your car, actually, space is at such a premium in the world's biggest, densest city centres and kind of urban areas that actually these areas that are currently serving petrol, let's not sell them off and put blocks of flats on them. Let's use that land, but to charge EVs. You can get lots of EV chargers on what is currently a forecourt for a petrol station. So, I kind of have... there's that side of it, but largely you will charge at home or at work when everyone's driving an EV in a few years' time. So even if you haven't got off-road parking, there's some amazing things being done to get you access to parking, to charging on street, also persuading workplaces to put chargers in and public car parks as well. We simply don't need to be thinking about replacing pumps with, petrol pumps with electric filling. So that's the number that this particular study put on it anyway. Electrify America's new level 3 systems, well, those are the really fast chargers. They provide a minimum of 150 kilowatts at 400 volts. Many of them are going to go further, 250 kilowatts at 800 volts, some of them 350 kilowatts, far more than any of the current crop of EVs can handle. The new Porsche Taycan is going to be the first car, of course, to make full use of that technology, which can add 20 miles of range every single minute. Is that right? I think I've got that right. Maybe I've underestimated that. Anyway, Electrify America can be used to, this week is rolling out a new smartphone app. Then what you can do with this smartphone app is, much like some of the other services, but with Electrify America, you can now see, this is really clever, you can now see how long someone's been on the charger that you are driving towards, if you need to use that. And also, it does a projected time for when they will finish that charging session. Now, that is brilliant. Because sometimes, they've just gone onto the charger, how long have they been there? You don't know, somebody might be doing just a little splash and dash, a little top-up, but that's a great innovation. Mentioned the Porsche a moment ago. I might as well bump this story up the running order now that we're talking about it. The interior has been seen for the very first time in spy photos. 2 new spy images revealed by Motor1.com and taken from the Taycan forum. You can see the cabin of the first electric Porsche, and it's pretty much the same as the concept car. 3 years ago, really, that debuted, I think. The resemblance starts at the layout of the dashboard. So there's this big horizontal digital display, and it goes across the dashboard. So the passenger's got some access to this, the driver's got access to it as well. The touchscreen control panel by the center console has been carried over from the concept as well. So more touchscreens in there for both front occupants to use. The binnacle, though, in behind the steering wheel, what sits in front of you as a driver, is very, very what you would expect. It's a digital dash. It's got digital dials. These aren't analog dials, but it's very much like it's shaped like a dash that you would expect. What the screen shows is dials. There's a start-stop button, which again, not all EVs have. Some of them you get in and you just go. There is a big, if you were firing up a petrol engine, there's a big start-stop button. So there's bits of this that are pretty carryover from the current way that cars look, and some of it is pretty new as well. Have a look if you want in those Motor One photos. Well, moving on to Audi. Audi's introducing some infrastructure that I think, this is the first time I've heard of it, and I can't believe that this has dodged me all this time, because this is such a good idea, and it's coming on the new Audi e-tron electric car. It's called Vehicle to Infrastructure. Now, I talk about vehicle to grid and vehicle to home. This is where, if you have a vehicle to grid system, it's where you plug your car into the electricity grid. If you have a vehicle to home, V2H, it's where you plug your car into your household electric and you take power from the car. But what about V2I, vehicle to infrastructure? Well, the way Audi are doing it is they're working with traffic light information systems. To start with, here in Europe for this system, from July, the Audi e-tron is going to have a traffic light system in place starting in Germany, and other European cities are going to follow in 2020. And it means that you're more likely to sail through on what's called the green wave. Now, I've never heard about the green wave, but I like it already. This sounds like a challenge. Can you go through your entire commute never stopping at a red light? Let's find out. Audi drivers will get a sign on their dashboard with what speed is required to drive at to reach the next traffic light as it's green. And then you pass all of them on green, and that, my friends, is the green wave. Driving in city, if it's not possible, by the way, I should add, if the speed isn't possible to get there when it's green, it will give a countdown to the next green phase. Driving in cities is going to become more relaxing, more efficient. In the USA, Audi customers have had something similar since late 2016. They were the first manufacturer worldwide to have something similar in the USA. It's called Time to Green. Now, maybe you've experienced this for some of my American listeners. Have you used Time to Green? green. They've had it for a couple of years now. If the driver reaches the lights on red, a countdown in the cockpit or the head-up display counts down the seconds to the next green phase. The service is now available at more than 5,000 intersections in the USA, like Denver, Houston, Vegas, LA, Portland, and DC. In the capital alone, about 1,000 intersections are linked up in the US to the system that's currently operational. The European system, the V2I system, takes it a step further, though, and the possibilities are for you to have this optimized journey where your car is always adjusting. Imagine this when cars are autonomous and actually cars are communicating with each other, or even just if you leave your Tesla in autopilot, for instance, when that it makes its way to them, or you leave your Audi in cruise control, when the car will adjust the speed automatically and you'll sail through on the green wave. Now, I love anything that gives me a challenge. I love the gamification of driving. Sometimes I like to just see if I can get the most efficiency out of my car. If I'm just having a play around, I'm like, how light can I drive it? A little challenge to myself. So I'd be well up for this. I love anything that is a game that puts me in competition, with myself, as it were. Let's do a little run of battery stories, okay? South Korea's SK Innovation said today it's going to invest 579.9 billion won, that's about $500 million, to build its second China factory for electric vehicle batteries, in a bet that China will open up to markets that the Korean battery makers don't have access to at the moment, says Reuters. Now, the latecomer, SK Innovation, the latecomer to the battery market, is now aggressively expanding its production capability globally, starting to build new factories in Hungary, China, and the United States since last year with a total investment of 5 trillion won. SK Innovation said its second China factory aims to meet rising orders for EV batteries globally without elaborating on its Chinese partners, the site, or the capacity of the proposed plant. Just proof that batteries are the key to this whole transition we're making. If you are anywhere near the battery industry, whether that is in raw materials, assemblies, anything like that, man, you are a smart cookie. Scania. Now, Scania are the Swedish truck and bus manufacturer. They're part of Volkswagen Group, actually. They signed a battery supply deal with Northvolt, according to what the chief exec, Henrik Henriksson, told Reuters, according to Inside EVs today. Northvolt was formed by the former Tesla exec Peter Carlson, and they plan to build a battery gigafactory in Sweden. It's going to cost about 3 billion euros to build it. The first step is going to be raising some money, which is always a challenge. But like I say, smart people know where to put money for the future. Rich people don't get rich for by accident often. I often find that rich people are very good at getting richer, and so I don't think there'll be any problem with people seeing the possibilities here in this funding round. They're raising 1.5 billion euros split between debt and equity. There's going to be the potential for a second factory in Germany. According to the article, Scania is in talks with Northvolt about some equity investment as well. Northvolt has done some fundraising already. They've got investors like ABB, Vestas, Vattenfall, Siemens, BMW. Various customers are in talks about taking their batteries as well, like Volvo, Jaguar Land Rover, Daimler, and of course BMW, one of the investors. And finally, final battery story today. It's funny how these stories come along. There's just 3 battery ones in a row. The Swedish car maker Volvo said today in a statement it signed a long-term battery deal with Asian firms LG Chem and CATL, which is Contemporary Amperex Technology Company Limited. It pushes their EV target of 50% of sales by 2025. As reported by the New York Times, the agreements follow a series of pacts between the Asian-based battery companies and global car makers. Global car makers planning a $300 billion surge in spending over the next 10 years. And so there's Volvo there, ultimately their owners, Geely, doing another big battery deal to ensure they've got some supply as well. All of these big car makers know how to make a car, right? They've been doing it a long time. They're very good at it. managing supply chains and things like that. They've got the factories, they've got the people and the skills and the mega brains at these companies to do it. Just always remember, batteries are in such short supply. Well, cells are in short supply. Make the cells. Doesn't matter who makes the batteries from the cells, whether that is a third-party company or whether you want to put them together yourself as a car maker. It's the thing that's holding it back at the moment. But I give you these stories. I bring you these battery stories, not because you're a battery geek, and I know I nerd out on this stuff, but because it's a sign that we're priming the pumps now. In a year or two, there's going to be this surge of EVs on the market. Prices going down, and so many people are going to be surprised. And you and I know it's happening. We are forewarned because we're talking about this stuff now. There's a long lead time to it. You've got to build the factories to make it. But once that production's up and on the way, there's so much money going into battery production at the moment. It's just, man, it's crazy exciting. But, we've got to wait a couple of years for it to come through. Everyone else is going to be taken by surprise, and you and I are going to be going like, yeah, we told you in 2019. Finally, Audi is going after Tesla's V3 superchargers with what they call sustained power. With the launch of Supercharger V3, Tesla pushed the industry to even higher charge rates, but Audi argues it doesn't mean much if they can't sustain it for a decent period of time. Well, charging speed is seen as one of those main features that needs to be improved in order to facilitate the widespread adoption of electric vehicles, is the opinion of Fred, who writes at Electrek today. When combining its new Supercharger V3 and the Model 3, says Fred, Tesla pushed the charge rate to 250 kilowatts peak. It's a new high for electric vehicles. Audi's e-tron is able to maintain much less than 250 kilowatts, just 140 kilowatts sustained. But Audi's point they're making today is they sustain it for much longer, a much higher state of charge, because they say the Tesla peaks at 250, but then drops down and charges much slower, actually pretty quickly. It's got a very small sweet spot in terms of that charging. It says the Audi e-tron can take that charge and just take it for longer and longer and longer because of its battery cooling technology, which they claim is superior, and its energy buffer. Let me tell you about that. The e-tron has a big old battery. The battery's 95 kilowatt hours. And if you listen to this show, and I talk about the range being just over 200 miles, well, how does that work? A massive battery and pretty small range. It's because of what Audi call the buffer. What they've done is they've reserved 8% at the top end. So think of it as 92% to 100. You can't go above. Although you will charge to 100%. Your screen will say 100, but think of it as only ever being able to go to 92. And then they've reserved the bottom 4%, right? So what that means is that you can't ever access that battery, but it's there as a safety, as a buffer, because batteries slow down. As you charge them, as they get full, then the charge rate slows. Right? You might know that already. Whereas the Audi e-tron will charge very quickly all the way to the top because, of course, you're not really going to the top. That's their way of doing it. I would add, by the way, I would say, not that you asked my opinion, I would prefer access because range is king. Whatever. Autopilot's nice. Over-the-air updates is nice. Performance is nice. Range is king. If there's one thing, right? Charging speed is nice. Range is king with an EV, and it's everything. And I want access to all of the battery, and okay, maybe reserve like the bottom. If you're going to kill your battery by going down to zero and just running out, if that's going to harm the battery, have some in reserve. Just protect it. But I don't want to be nannied. Right? Maybe they think their drivers do. If I need to crawl home at 20 miles an hour, if it's the difference between I misjudged it or the charger was broken and I get home slowly crawling and I pull into my driveway as the battery runs out, or I break down 50 miles from my house, I'd like the first option, please. I want that under my control, but maybe that's me as like an EV driver. Maybe Audi think for their drivers there is a case to be made for not letting them access all of the battery, but when they're charging, they're like, wow, my battery charges really quick all the way to 100. Well, it's not really 100, but anyway, maybe we're splitting hairs. It's been a good podcast and I've had fun. It's been a good, fun podcast. Lots of different bits of news, and as always, a ton of positive news. Man, it makes me feel good at the end of each day. Let me say thank you to everyone who has answered our question of the week. why don't you? It's this. What's more important, hardware or software? And you cannot sit on the fence. When you buy an EV, what's got to be bang on right out of the gate? Is it the hardware or is it the software? It's an interesting question. Let me know your thoughts. Email me personally, hello@evnewsdaily.com. You can leave a comment on Facebook and the YouTube show. Rightio. Time for the Andy bit. Well, there are 471 previous shows. If you would like to get any of them, they're all online for free. If you want to listen to some of the previous interviews, Moixa, the UK company Moixa battery storage firm, they've been in the news this week. Big investment from Honda. I interviewed them last year. Really, really interesting. If you go to my blog, evnewsdaily.com, there's a search box there. And if you just type in, like if you're a fan of a certain car or something, if you just type in Moixa, M-O-I-X-A, you can hear that interview that we did with them last year. It'll be indexed there and it'll just bring you the podcast straight away. So like 470 odd podcasts on my blog. If you're wondering what the Patreon money goes to, things like hosting and streaming and organising it all. So I always want them online as a bit of a resource, maybe look back in a few years' time, see if I was right or wrong. Hopefully I'll be on the right side of history. And if you want to check out the Patreon thing, no pressure. I mean, I'll make the show whatever, but it's patreon.com/evnewsdaily. Do have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow. And remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.